Let's try. All right. And at the same time, by doing this, we can make an argument for the existence of God. We go through 12 arguments in this class, very strong arguments for why the God of the Bible exists. What I'm taking you through is parts of book 2 that we're going to get to on the science part, but we're still in book 4 on God's will. I just wanted to throw in a little bit so we could see the flow and you can see how this works. But we go very, very deep on the existence of an immaterial soul and who you are as a person. All right, premise 1. By definition, physicalism claims there's no immaterial mind, soul, or spirit in me. That is true, that's physicalism. If physicalism is true, then all my thoughts and actions are determined solely by biological processes, known as biological determinism. In other words, you're determined to behave this way. You have to be, because if you weren't just physical, you'd have a choice. You wouldn't be trapped in determinism. So far, so good? If all my thoughts and actions are determined solely by biological processes, I have no freedom to take control or responsibility for my own thoughts and actions. You following? Everybody okay? Every time does everybody understand deductive logic? It's okay if you don't. When we do book 1, see, this is why I drive people out of this class. We go through the difference between inductive, deductive. We go into how logic works. And deductive logic is saying, if you can write something called a premise, and the premise is true just because it's known to be true. It can be intuitive, it can be obvious. You know, Aristotle's a man, all men are mortal, therefore Aristotle is mortal, right? So Aristotle's a man. Okay, I got that, right? So we can do that. So that's what a premise is. So they have to follow. If one is true, I can go to the next one, and you just keep going. So what you're seeing is I started with physicalism, then I got to the point saying, okay, if physicalism is true, I have no freedom because I'm determined already in advance on how I live. This is meant to be feel free to jump in. Don't let me just do all the talking. If there's anything you disagree with, or if you want to add something. But I can willingly make a choice contrary to desires, habits, and addictions that I physically crave. I can make a choice. Therefore, I do have the freedom to take control and responsibility for my own thoughts and actions. Right, so far, is every one of these premises true, just by itself? Read the premise. If my thoughts and actions are determined, if they're determined, which then goes to premise 2, which says if physicalism is true, it's determined, then go to premise 1, determinism is material. So you got to read these carefully. There's a reason for the prepositional phrases of if, because they are allowing you to keep moving. Okay? So number 3 is saying, if I am determined, I have no freedom. But then I change the preposition to the word but in premise 4. But I can make choices. So all of a sudden, I'm shifting, right? Okay. Well, what this is saying, though, is not contradicting it. It's saying that if you really have determined thoughts, you have no freedom.
It's more how it makes sense.
Yes, I agree. Why do we put 3 in there? Or why do we put 2 in there? Why do we do it? Because we need people to understand the transition from physicalism to no freedom. We need them to understand that, and it's called determinism. So when we get to that point, because you hear this at universities, this whole idea, they use multiple different words, and they're difficult to follow. You'll hear physicalism, materialism, you'll hear logical positivism, you'll hear what we just talked about, determinism. They're all pointing to the same thing, that you're nothing but, they call it moist robot. You're just a robot. That's how you live.
To determine
Right.
this is true.
Right, so you shouldn't listen to anybody, you shouldn't even listen to a scientist. But wait, you're not letting me, you got to let me get through this, all right? Well, just let me get through this. We're going to get into the objections and we're going to get into this. Because what happens, this is a good example of a debate without the Bible, which is fine, but what does the Bible say, right? So we want to get there. So far where we got to is the point of this but thing of, I actually can make choices. Therefore, physicalism is false. Because I can make choices. If it's false, I'm not just a physical material existence. Because it's only one or the other. If I'm not a material existence, then I'm also an immaterial existence. You follow me? See, it's amazing. You don't have to go to college for this stuff. You don't have to go to classroom. We are created to be able to think through these things. If I'm also an immaterial existence, the physical natural processes alone cannot be solely responsible for my existence.
That's true.
Right? Yeah. There has to be something beyond the physical, if I'm beyond the physical, that has to do with my existence because I'm not all physical. Right. So where did this non-physical part of me come from?
I just have a quick question about just trying to think. So do they believe that we have a conscience?
No.
Yeah. So they're saying.
That's what I was trying to
Right.
differentiate.
Right.
Hold on.
But wait, yeah, we're going to get to conscience definition in a minute.
I don't want to get
That's
too
okay.
lost into that, but I was just kind of curious because the picture that I was getting is say that you come from like an alcoholic family. Mm-hmm. So it's already scientifically, they see patterns in people with addictions,
Right.
but then how do you explain someone that doesn't become an addict or they change the course of their whole family? That doesn't have a logic to.
Right.
So before you walked into class, he was saying that those people who believe in physicalism say that we have no mind.
Oh,
So they're saying we're, yeah.
Without.
That was a polite way of going.
Well,
So-
yeah, but
Okay.
she's asking really good questions.
That is a good
Yeah,
question.
I'm thinking from the other side because I used to debate Christians.
Yeah, and the reason, though, what happens all the time in debates is we go to the outliers. This happens at work all the time. I do statistical process control, right? I'll have 1,000 dots on a chart that show a certain pattern. There'll be one outlier, and they'll go, oh, that's wrong because of that one point. And I'll say, well, wait a minute, what's that point about? Well, and then we'll go into the point. I said, well, that's an unusual event. Mm-hmm. Unusual events happen. Things go wrong. Mm-hmm. What's the correction for that thing? The same solution as the other dots, right? You have to go back and give therapy. There has to be something to do to try to correct what you know is wrong.
Yeah.
So, he's saying something really important. Remember when we did in class 2, the origin of the universe? Some of you who were in there, we did it. We said premise 1 was all things that begin to exist have a cause. Everybody went, yeah.
You mean like motion?
No, anything that begins to exist. Like I'm not going to see a zebra pop into the classroom, right? I mean, anything,
Bang theory.
yeah, anything though, a baby being born has a cause. Two parents got together, never mind, you know that part. So everything you can trace back. Then premise 2, the universe had a cause. I mean, the universe began to exist. To your point, that can't stand on its own. Where's the evidence, right? So then you take that premise and you demonstrate it's true from the evidence. Now premise 2 is true. Now you can move on, right? I did it this way because most of you in here have never looked at physicalism. I just wanted to take my time, lay out the details. I got another one that's only 3, and it will get there much quicker. But I knew this would happen, which is good. We have to think. Make sense? All right, so when we talked about will in the first class in book 4, we put it in three phases, right? The first one was, okay, it's a choice I make, but that doesn't mean I've exercised my will. The second one is a decision. I got a fork in the road. Am I going left or right? The third one is I showed penguins jumping off a cliff. I have to actually then demonstrate my will by taking action. I have to do something, right? It's what you see on TV all the time. Good intentions aren't the same thing as good actions, right? So executing or exercising your will is that choice. You put those two together. You actually choice and then you do it. Yep. That's called the outlier data point I talked about on the big screen, because not all of us are walking around with faulty brains. If you let me, I got some videos. Michael Egner he's a neuroscientist. He's going to be showing you some stuff. Guys, I got to keep moving. I will not get through this class. All right? All right. So this premise 7 says, if I'm also an immaterial existence, the natural processes alone cannot be solely responsible for my existence. They can't be. Therefore, there has to be a supernatural, which means, the word itself means outside of nature. Sometimes we hear supernatural, we think of God. All it means is supra, outside of. Something outside of the natural world that's responsible for my existence. Does this make sense? So I love it when you look at the Bible. Sometimes God says some things that he's really trying to get people's attention. Psalm 100 is one of my favorite psalms. It's very short. It talks about this whole idea of him being your creator, but it doesn't start out that way. It starts out really cool where David's saying, make a joyful shout to the Lord, all the earth, right? It says, serve the Lord with gladness, come before him with singing. Then it says this, know that the Lord, he is God. It is he who made us and not we ourselves. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. So this is the annoying part about God. He doesn't tell you more. He doesn't say, know that I am the Lord, I'm God, because physicalism versus dualism doesn't make any sense. So here's dualism, chapter 3 of Psalm 42. He doesn't do that. He just expects you to believe him, right? But when we use deductive logic, we're using our brains so we can understand his mind and what he's saying in the Bible. And this is what we don't teach people anymore, is how to study the Bible so you can see how life operates.